Hey everyone, in my latest podcast, I sit down with a company in the psychedelic space who plans to go public later this year and whose business model is to expand clinics across the country using psychedelic compounds. One of their first markets they plan to focus on, First Nations communities, which are in badly need for this. As we all know, the psychedelic space has been hit hard over the last 6 months. Yet this company feels now is the best time more than ever to go public. Why? Find out now at our latest podcast. Cobb, what's going on, bro? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the TDR podcast. And joining me here in the podcast today is senior management from Optimind Pharma. Let's begin with the CEO, Tomas Sipos. Tom, great to have you on. How are things?
Very good, thanks. Happy to be here.
Great. And an old stranger, but he's back on the show. Dr. Mike Hart. It's been a few months, but how are you?
I'm good, brother. Always good to chat with you, Shad. Always good to be on TDR.
You as well. You guys enjoying this weather? It's summertime. You know, I know they say sell in May and go away, but it may be an ideal time for companies to go public with realistic expectations, like we were saying off the camera, right, Tom?
Absolutely. A time when you can get a lot of work done.
Yeah. So want to find out, obviously, about your company, Optimind Pharma. You describe yourself as an emerging leader in psychedelic therapy, partnered with developers of psilocybin-associated treatments and products. So I'd like to learn more based off of that. So for our audience new to your story, walk us through who you are, what markets you're targeting, and most importantly, why investors should care.
Sure. I'll start and then pass over to Mike.
Okay.
Bottom line is we are in the psychedelic sector. We have a clinic and a model to roll out more clinics for right now ketamine treatment, but in the future psilocybin and more. We also are in the application process, a very late stage for a controlled substance license with Health Canada, which and we do that through a joint venture with First Nations, just north of Montreal is our facility. And there we're going to be producing psilocybin as well as some R&D. And Mike, maybe I can pass to you on the clinic side.
Yeah, sure. So, on the clinic side, like Tom said, we're offering ketamine, and we're also, hopefully going to be offering psilocybin in the future. So, for people who are curious, why we're offering ketamine. So, ketamine often gets grouped into psychedelic medicine, so things like MDMA, psilocybin. However, technically, ketamine is not a psychedelic; it's an anesthetic, and it's used in emergency rooms all over Ontario, which is why I can prescribe it right now. And even though it's not technically a psychedelic, it seems to produce the same type of beneficial mental health effects for patients when you're looking at ketamine versus psilocybin. And so, we're very happy to be offering that to patients now. Patients are really doing well with it as well. Like, they've responded incredibly well. And, I've been fortunate enough to be published for my work twice now in the past few years regarding ketamine use. And, we're just really excited to hopefully introduce psilocybin shortly and get patients started on that so we can, help some patients with that medicine as well.
Dr. Hart, you're not only a doctor, but you're viewed as an influencer within this industry. You've got a big name, big following. You've appeared a number of times on Joe Rogan's podcast. Why does it make sense, or why did it make sense to obviously join this company? What did you like about the overall model?
Yeah, well, there's several things that I liked about the company. I mean, first of all, I really like the people involved with the company. I think that's really the most important thing overall. And, Sheldon Kales, Raul Kushwa, Tom Sipos, I've worked with these guys before. They've brought companies public before, have done really well. They were involved with PMed or Predict Medics, which was actually over $1 on the stock exchange in 2020.
Yeah.
I knew that we were going to be working with really good people. Also, too, we brought in Tony Clement, who's, the ex-health minister of Canada. So that obviously helps our company as well. And then, like kind of Tom was saying, we have a very, very strong relationship with the Indigenous community, thanks to a lady named Anna Freeman. So, we just believe that this is, the best team that can be put together, and we feel that we're in a very strong position with the team that we have, and that's why I wanted to join this particular group, and I think that we have a lot of confidence that we're going to be successful in the very near future.
Well said. Tom, when I reviewed the business model, like Dr. Hart was saying, you have a joint venture with Monetary Pharma, which has a relationship with Health Canada, Indigenous and Northern Affairs to service Indigenous people wishing to explore fungi, as both medicine, spiritual, or Section 56 purposes. So walk me through what this venture is about and why the focus on First Nation communities as a target market. You're on mute, Tom. You're on mute, Tom.
There, thanks. A few reasons. Basically, we look. The First Nations is a community where I think this treatment could be helpful, and it's a group where the government is trying to get access to this kind of treatment. Secondly, they are very interested in getting together with us to create the facility to produce psilocybin. And that whole conversation led to us combining both in the joint venture. The joint venture is the vehicle through which we are applying for the Health Canada license, and it gives us excellent full vertical integration in terms of having the clinics. The clinics roll out in Ontario, in Canada, across the country, but then it gives us a supply of psilocybin, gives us R&D, and also gives us great access to the Indigenous community, where I believe the treatments will be provided and very helpful.
Dr. Hart, where are we with First Nations communities? I've spoken to a lot of doctors in the past, doctors that have actually flown up to First Nation communities because you've heard like the suicide rate is just, it's astronomical, but maybe give an idea, because I'm sure a lot of people have heard some of these, different communities and how mental health is just wiped right through, in addition to a lot of other places across Canada. But where are we at, I guess, right now, and the opportunity or the concern or the need that this can present to, communities like this?
Yeah, so I'm happy that we're discussing this today, and it kind of relates to a little bit of my experience in cannabis. And the reason I say that is because my experience in cannabis, I was working with a lot of veterans, and I still work with a lot of veterans. And we knew, back in 2014 when I started working with them, or 2015, that these people were subjected to some horrific traumas in their life. They had PTSD, and the government kind of recognized that, and they still are, outside of someone who has a motor vehicle accident in some very, very special cases. They are the only group of people in Canada who are covered for cannabis. And I think that, when you're looking at mental health, and I'm certainly not dismissing, other people who are suffering from mental health, but I think that, the Indigenous population is, suffering probably more than the regular population. So I think, there's almost some parallels between, the veterans and cannabis, and maybe now to the Indigenous group, and maybe using psychedelic medicines. And, one of the reasons why I think psychedelic medicines are the best tool for this group of people is because, as you mentioned, there's a high rate of suicide.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you're looking at traditional medicines, say like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which is, the medication, or the class medication that's most commonly prescribed for mental health disorders, they oftentimes don't reduce the risk of suicide. And oftentimes when people start taking those types of medicines, it actually increases the risk for suicide initially, because they feel like it may give them a little bit of motivation to actually go ahead and do it. So if you're so apathetic, or if you're so depressed, it almost doesn't give you the motivation to go ahead and do it. Now, when you look at psilocybin and ketamine, these medicines, they can actually reduce the risk of suicide, or reduce suicidal thoughts and ideations within hours. Within literally within 24 to 48 hours. People say that a lot of their suicidal thoughts are completely gone. They may not be gone for good, but they're gone like right away, instantly. Like I
Right.
said, within 1 to 2 days, sometimes even less. So I think that targeting this group is a very good thing to do, because
Yeah.
again, if someone is suicidal, you really don't know when they're going to do it, and you can't wait, 4 to 6 weeks or anything like that. In terms of treatment, you have to treat right away on the spot, and you have to treat with something that's going to be effective right away on the spot. And I think that by utilizing psychedelics and by utilizing ketamine, we're going to be able to achieve that.
So when I look at the rollout plan, as far as clinics and expanding, obviously within these communities and across the country, like where are we at, Tom? Like what are we looking at as far as the amount of clinics that you have now, and then most importantly, what the rollout and expansion growth plan will be over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, right now we have the clinic in London. We are talking to people who are interested in taking up ownership, franchising out more clinics.
Okay.
Dr. Hart has many contacts in the industry through whom that have expressed interest, and we're looking at that. Clearly, we're starting in Ontario, closer to home, looking at Canada beyond that. And maybe we'll get to later, but we're in the process of going public, and the funds that come with that will again then be used to grow the network.
Dr. Hart, with your colleagues in the space, you have a big network of people, not only in Ontario, but across the country. What's their feedback like towards all this? Is it the same thing as what you're viewing? Is that there is a need and they're actually agreeing with going through with a lot of this stuff, knowing the efficacy that it's providing?
I think there's actually been a little bit less pushback recently than a lot of people may have anticipated.
Why?
So, like recent, I think because the medicines are working.
Yeah.
Like once patients start telling other physicians that, like, hey, I know that you've been my family doctor, for the last 10 or 20 years, and we've tried all these medications, but I've just used ketamine once. This is by far the best thing I've ever used. Once that conversation happens, half a dozen to a dozen times with the same physician, which I think is happening now, cumulatively, then those physicians are starting to open up. So, I have a lot of physicians now who are, tend to be, I would say, conservative overall in how they approach their practice of medicine. And they're referring to me all the time. They're referring to me for ketamine. And I think that just shows that, this is a growing industry, and that the physicians that are involved with this are now seeing ketamine and are seeing psychedelics as a legitimate medicine. And I think that's what we need to see. We can't have just sort of, a few doctors that are on board with ketamine, or that are on board with psychedelics.
Right.
That won't make it, available for most patients. We need to make this medicine accessible. And in order to make this medicine accessible, we need to ensure that other physicians are comfortable prescribing this medicine. And a lot of the ways we get physicians comfortable prescribing a medicine is by producing very, very good results. And that's what we found so far with ketamine, and what we've done at Ready to Go Clinic. And when you look at trials on psilocybin, whether it's trials that MAPS have done, or other trials that you can see on PubMed and peer-reviewed places, you'll see that psilocybin is effective. And I think that that's what really gets physicians' attention. And I think that's what's going to, enable this to become more commercially available for patients in the future. And I see that, unraveling more and more and more.
You believe that, huh? Because like when I look at cannabis, a lot of the feedback with traditional medicine doctors was that there wasn't enough data, there wasn't enough research, which I can understand why. But in this space, there is data, there is research that's provided, and there's years of it. So as the government officials get behind this, you do think that a lot of doctors will just, once there's data, they will buy into this a lot and be like, start prescribing, and you could see big growth within the industry?
I do. And, just coming back to the cannabis, just because, you just mentioned that, comparing to ketamine. So, ketamine, there are actually two different forms of ketamine. There's an R and an S form. And, we actually use a combination of both in the product that we use. But if you look at something like cannabis, and I was talking to Dr. Ethan Russo the other day about this, who's on my podcast, and there's over 150 cannabinoids in cannabis. There's different terpenes, and the reason that I mention this is that it's very, very hard to regulate cannabis. It's very hard to do a randomized control trial on cannabis because you can use different types of cannabis within a particular study. So it's very, very difficult to study cannabis per se. It's not as difficult to study ketamine. We're reproducing the exact same product every single time. And so I think that's what makes physicians very, very comfortable, is because they may look at these cannabis studies and say, and kind of dismiss it or discredit it, because when they look at the designs in the study, they'll find a lot of flaws, particularly in the fact that the products may not be consistent. If you don't have consistent products, you're just not going to be as comfortable when you're looking at those conclusions, then applying those conclusions to your patients clinically. But
which
if you look at
100%
ketamine,
makes sense, right? That has always been the issue, is consistency, right?
100%, and that totally makes sense. And I even to some degree applaud those physicians for doing that, because it makes the testing more rigorous. And and like I've said before, we need to have these medicines, whether it's cannabis or psychedelics, they should be tested on the same level as other pharmaceutical drugs. And once they're tested on the same level, then you'll see other physicians come on board and start to prescribe the medicine. But just coming back to the ketamine for a second, just to make that point one more time, is that we're reproducing, we're giving patients the same product every time. And I think that's why physicians are more comfortable with the ketamine right now. And that's why I see them being more comfortable in the future as well.
Understanding what they have, right?
Yes. And just being able to reproduce a study.
Yeah. 100%. Tom, I wanted to finish things off. I was looking at your investor deck, and you actually list, when I look at this, Compass Pathways, Field Trip, and MindMed as comparables to your business model. On what basis do you make this type of comparison, if you can elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Bottom line is, all companies in this space are new companies.
Yeah.
Some are months in, some are a year or two in, but clearly we're all new companies in this space.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at other comparables and companies, we look at who else is out there. There's no Coca-Cola. There's no decade-long companies here in this space. We're new, so we make that comparison, and therefore, in going public, we're looking at other public companies, because clearly we're in the process of going public right now. So it's the natural and logical thing to do.
Tony Clement, former health minister, it's a big name on your board. Can you maybe touch on some of the relationships that he's going to be able to help nurture and obviously advance this company?
We've had great conversations with Health Canada. Our process is going very well, and it's a very regulated industry. To have a license and a good relationship with the regulator, and to be contributing to the emergence of the industry, is very important. Tony has introduced us to many people and opened a lot of doors, and that's where our credentials, our people, can really shine through. Mike, I don't know if you have anything further to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's an excellent advisor, and I think he brings something to the table that everyone else in the company doesn't necessarily bring, and that's from being the ex-health minister. He's learned a lot of things through the government that none of us would be able to learn unless we were in that position ourselves. So like I was saying at the beginning of the show, I do feel that we have an excellent team, and part of the reason why I feel that is because we have so many diverse skills within this team. We have Sheldon Kales, who's fantastic at doing business and bringing companies public. We have Raul Kushwa, who's a brilliant scientist, but he's also excellent at bringing companies public as well. So we have a lot of different people on our team with very different skill sets. And then Tom has been in this space for a long time as well, and has done very well. So we just feel that our team is very professional, very, very experienced. We have all the skill sets that are necessary and that were required to make this thing very successful. And that's the big reason why we're so confident in going public.
Well, I'm learning more and more, especially investors in this space right now. They want to see board members with government relations and how they can advance companies, and then not only doctors that are researchers or scientists that obviously can do great research, but also in a lot of ways, based on the efficacy that's provided, are able to indirectly raise money, which is going to be crucial for a lot of companies. Tom, I love the attitude that you said. Now's a good time to go public because there's no crazy inflated numbers and crazy expectations. No better way to go up, than where you're at right now. But, you talked a little bit about this off camera, but you strongly feel that, it's soon to be, as you said, you filed everything through I assume it's the CSE. And then once that comes to fruition, you're thinking now's the time to obviously go public. It's funny, a lot of companies are, wondering why they went public when they did in the last 3 to 5 months, but you look at it differently.
Absolutely. I mean, look at a company that went public in November, December
Yeah.
of 2021. They're not very happy. So clearly, it's a good time to go public. Valuations are down, and as we've just discussed throughout this interview, the demand is up. People see what's going to happen, the need, the response from the medical community, from regulators, and that is something that I think and hope will feed consistent long-term growth. And that, I think, is the most healthy time for a company to go public.
Well, listen, I applaud both of you for the model that you're building out and the need that obviously a lot of these communities need right now. But best of luck moving forward. Love to have you back on if and when you obviously do go public later this year. But I wish you both all the best. I appreciate you checking in here today.
Well, thank you so much for having us, Shad. Always great to be on TDR.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hart. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Shad.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you like this video, wait until you see what we have next. Some of the best thought leaders in the verticals that we cover, from cannabis and psychedelics to cryptos and NFTs and sports wagering. So if you want to learn more, make sure to click on that bell for all notifications, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.